Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. Of Congo voted on Thursday, the second day of a chaotic and violent general election, after authorities extended opening hours for polling stations that failed to open the previous day. The United Nations says fighting between Sudan's military and the paramilitary group has forced over 300,000 to flee their homes in a province that had been a safe haven for families displaced by conflict. And a Burkinabe journalist pushes back against sexual violence in the conflict-racked country by providing a platform for others to report rape and other forms of sexual violence. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We begin our broadcast in Central Africa, where some Democratic Republic of Congo voters headed to the polls for a second straight day after a chaotic rollout and lengthy delays forced election officials to extend the balloting hours. The country's election commission says a delay in the deployment of certain materials and equipment resulted in some polls opening late and others not opening at all on Wednesday. As the rolls close Thursday, the stakes are high in one of Africa's largest nations, where the mineral resources are increasingly crucial to the global economy. VOA's Paul Ndiho has more details on the voting process.
People struggled to find their names on the registers, while violence caused chaos in other places across the DRC. The decision by the Electoral Commission, known as CINI, to extend the vote was rejected by 5 presidential candidates who are already calling for a rerun. They say the commission has no constitutional or legal right to extend the vote and demanded the reorganization of the failed elections by a differently structured CINI at a date agreed by all stakeholders in a joint statement released late Wednesday. But for months, the Electoral Commission rejected allegations of mismanagement and fraud and insisted it could deliver a free and fair vote.
We've stood here for so long. We are local observers and should be inside the polling station monitoring the process. But they've asked us to wait here. I don't know what is going on.
With no runoff planned, it's been a sprint to the finish line in the first round, and the candidate that emerges with the most votes will be declared the winner, and the president-elect will be sworn in on January 20th, 2024. 19 candidates are running in the presidential race. The front-runners are incumbent President Felix Tshisekedi, Moise Katumbi, Martin Fayulu, and Denis Mukwege. The delay is raising fears among some opposition candidates that many people will be unable to cast their ballots after the polls close.
We want all 71,000 something polling stations, each of them has to open and receive voters so they can vote. If we don't have all of them, we don't consider these elections.
Despite delays in receiving the necessary electoral materials, amid tense security, many voters express frustration as others continue to aim accusations of electoral fraud at the organizers.
At the end of this day, and I just believe that the Electoral Commission will activate all that is needed so that the Congolese people can vote properly in peace.
Congo's elections are being held amid rising inflation, widespread poverty, and an armed conflict in the eastern part of the country. Voters told VOA they want a president who can end armed conflicts in the east and create jobs to improve their lives. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
For more on the second day of voting in Congo, I'm joined from Kinshasa by VOA's Shakur Aboud. Hello, Shakur.
Hello, Esther. How are you doing?
Good. And so how is the Electoral Commission reacting to the voters' anger, where we hear that there are a number of names missing on the ballot?
Well, the Electoral Commission, in a statement today, admitted that there has been some irregularities, but they did not address the specific issues which have been mentioned, like names being missing or things that have been not in the right place. What they said, they believe the irregularities were done, and they are very sorry about that, and they hope everything will be fixed. But they believe that those irregularities won't put the election results into jeopardy. They think that it won't be a problem at the end of the day.
Shakur, there are 5 presidential candidates who are very unhappy with how things have turned out since yesterday and are calling for an extension, a rerun of the polls. Are there any legal channels for them to follow to be able to have a rerun?
Yes, they do have a legal channel. They do have the possibility of filing complaint in the courts and bring their complaint and argument, because they have said that a lot of things have gone wrong during this election, irregularities. They're complaining some of the machines which are supposed to go to one place went to another, the delay. And then the main question they're having is the legality of the Electoral Commission to extend the voting time. So they have a possibility to be listened, especially by the Constitutional Court, which will listen to whatever complaint they file, and then the decision is up to the courts to see what can be done.
And what are local and international observers saying about this seemingly chaotic electoral process?
When you talked with them in private, they all agreed it was really chaotic, and they said we can't even report this. This has never been seen for a long time. But all of them have not yet issued any public or official statement. They all told us that they're going to publish an official statement just after the results of the election coming out, which is supposed to be tomorrow, or at the close of election day today. Some will start giving their statements because they're saying people are still continuing to vote. So they will want to see how this process goes on, and then they will release a statement on what they have observed.
Shakur, thank you very much for your reporting. VOA's Shakur Aboud reporting live for us from Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, as voters in Congo cast their ballots in the nation's presidential election, VOA brings you a new feature entitled My Vote, My Future. It's an opportunity for voters to share their expectations for their future president. Let's meet Alice Kilaneko, a street food vendor in Congo.
Je m'appelle Maman Alice Kilaneko.
My name is Mrs. Alice Kilaneko. I'm 46. I was born here in Kinshasa. I cook Congolese food usually, called malewa. What I expect from the future president of the republic is that he sees to the students getting an education, that we receive quality health care, and the salaries of civil servants and the police are fair. The president should create jobs so that we have a good life, and that children can study at ease. The military should get paid more so they can help their families. That's going to add a lot to me because I didn't want to do the malewa because I'm D6. I stopped at high school. I wanted to be a teacher. I left teaching because of the poor salary. But if teachers are paid more, I could go back to teaching. If he can help us to have all these things, we'll have good living conditions. The message I want to give to the future president of the republic is that he should listen above all to his people, not his entourage.
On the next episode of My Vote, My Future, we'll meet Dr. Fabian Kashama. The United Nations says fighting between Sudan's military and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces has pushed up to 300,000 people to flee their homes in Jazeera province. The area had been a safe haven for families displaced by the devastating conflict. Fighting erupted in the city of Wad Medani, the provincial capital of Jazeera, after the RSF attacked the city earlier this month. The RSF says it took over Wad Medani earlier this week, and the military says that its troops withdrew from the city and an investigation was opened. The International Organization for Migration says that many of the evacuees reportedly on foot fled to safer areas in the provinces of Al-Qadarif, Sinnar and the White Nile. The World Food Programme says that it has, for the time being, halted food assistance in some parts of Jazeera. Liberia's president-elect says he plans to declare his assets as part of the effort to weed out corruption. Joseph Boakai says he also plans to institute a measure to ensure transparency and accountability in his administration's fight to eliminate financial malfeasance and wrongdoing. This, he says, he plans to do by working with international partners to audit the government and the outgoing administration. VOA correspondent Peter Clody had an interview with President-elect Joseph Boakai at VOA headquarters here in Washington.
We start by making sure those people that we bring to cabinet are people of integrity. And secondly, want to make sure that even beginning with myself, we'll declare our assets and want to make sure that this is well known, the purpose of coming to government, to know that it's public service. And if you are not ready to serve the public, you can go elsewhere. But we want to make sure that we start on a clear note that the people of our country stood on line, they protected the votes, not to bring a team again that will do the same thing that the other people are doing or worse. So it's a clear message, declare your asset, make sure that we are prepared to audit the outgoing government so that they tell the Liberian people of their stewardship, and to make sure that we start on a footing where people know that they come to serve the public and not themselves. If they don't understand that, they actually fall where it may.
Mr. President-elect, you talked about asset declaration starting from yourself and the people who work with you, as well as the outgoing administration. How do you plan to avoid the semblance of targeting people? Because some people will say these are politically motivated to tarnish their reputation or to go against them, people from certain tribes or specific parts of the country. How do you plan to avoid this?
We are aware of that. And when we talk about auditing, it's not going to be a Liberian auditing. We want to make sure that our international partners work with us for a public tender, for competent and renowned auditing firm that will be qualified at an international level to make sure they come on board to do that. We are aware of people saying witch hunting, but I don't think it's witch hunting when you have to account for your stewardship, but it has to be done in a way that is well-established, entity with reputation, to make sure that it audits and make sure that it reports to the public the findings.
That was Liberian President-elect Joseph Boakai speaking with VOA's Peter Clody. Angolan billionaire Isabel dos Santos has lost her fight against an application to freeze up to
$735 million of her assets in a lawsuit at London's High Court. Dos Santos, Africa's first female billionaire, whose father, Jose Eduardo dos Santos, ruled Angola for 38 years until 2017, is being sued by Angolan telecoms operator Unitel. Unitel asked the High Court to grant a worldwide freezing order over dos Santos' assets at a hearing in November. The United Nations Security Council has a much anticipated and delayed vote scheduled for Thursday on a new resolution about desperately needed aid to Gaza, where the Israel-Hamas war has created a dire humanitarian crisis. Tens of thousands of people seeking a safe haven are crammed into shelters and tent camps amid shortages of food, medicine, and other basic supplies. Over the past few days, several large explosions were seen on the Lebanon side of its border with northern Israel. The Israeli army says its fighter jets have struck a number of Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. Israel also says it has intercepted a suspicious aerial target that crossed into its territory from Lebanon, and the alert system in the area was activated due to danger of falling shrapnel. Israeli and Hezbollah fighters have traded fire along the border almost daily since the war in Gaza erupted more than 2 months ago. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says he expects Israel to shift its military operations in Gaza to a lower intensity phase, during which there will be more targeted operations focused on the Hamas leadership and its infrastructure. Blinken says once this shift happens, the harm done to civilians should decrease significantly, while repeating his calls for Israel to heed its obligation to minimize civilian casualties as it moves to destroy Hamas.
We continue to believe that Israel does not have to choose between removing the threat of Hamas and minimizing the toll on civilians in Gaza. It has an obligation to do both, and it has a strategic interest to do both. We're more determined than ever to ensure that out of this horrific tragedy comes a moment of possibility for Israelis, for Palestinians, for the region, to live in lasting peace and lasting security. That out of this darkness comes light. Realizing that possibility will require all parties to make tough choices about the steps that they're willing to take, including the United States. We will test this proposition with the urgency and the creativity that it deserves and that America's interests demand.
Washington, Israel's closest ally, has called publicly over the past week for it to scale down its all-out war mode and end what U.S. President Joe Biden calls indiscriminate bombing. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated on Wednesday that the military offensive in Gaza will continue until Hamas is defeated. VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias has the details.
The vote on a new resolution to help scale up aid deliveries to the Gaza Strip was again delayed in the United Nations Security Council.
I believe that capitals that have equities in this file are engaging at the highest level of diplomacy to reach a text that will have impact on the ground. Diplomacy takes time.
The United States has vetoed 2 earlier resolutions calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire over concerns it would allow Hamas to regroup. The militants made a surprise terrorist incursion into Israel on October 7, taking more than 240 Israelis and foreigners hostage and killing about 1,200 people.
We hear many countries urging the end to this conflict, which we would all like to see. I hear virtually no one demanding of Hamas that it stop hiding behind civilians, that it lay down its arms, that it surrender. This is over tomorrow if Hamas does that.
But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed the fighting won't stop until Israel's military objectives are achieved.
The elimination of Hamas, the release of our hostages, and the removal of the threat from Gaza. All Hamas terrorists, from the first to the last, are dead men. They have only two options: surrender or die.
Netanyahu's government, however, is facing increasing pressure from relatives of the more than 100 remaining captives to strike a new deal with Hamas and bring the hostages home. Hamas has set its own conditions for releasing more hostages, including an immediate end to the war. And as of now, a negotiated truce remains elusive. Verónica Valderas Iglesias, VOA News, Washington.
Would like to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, a Burkina Faso journalist talks about reporting on taboo issues. Stay with us.
Christmas traditions have been around forever. The dinner, the going to church, the gifts exchange makes the holidays an exciting time of the year for many people on the continent. There are various Christmas traditions in Africa. Across the continent, many non-Christians also join in the Christmas festivities. In this week's edition of Our Voices, we'll explore the many ways Christmas is celebrated throughout the continent, regardless of religion. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain, and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
In other news, the International Monetary Fund has approved an immediate $187 million loan payout to Zambia because the country is revising a restructuring proposal for $3 billion of bonds that official creditors had rejected in November. It will be the third payout under the country's $1.3 billion extended credit arrangement approved in August 2022. Analysts say a steady deterioration of Egypt's economy is putting the nation under pressure to take long-awaited measures. Foremost is a currency devaluation and hiking interest rates along with faster state asset sales. The government likely postponed the painful steps until after Abdel Fattah al-Sisi swept to a third six-year term in a December election. And Guinea-Bissau's President Umaro Sissoko Embalo has dismissed Prime Minister Geraldo Martins just 1 week after his reappointment, according to a presidential decree issued Wednesday. The decree did not provide a reason for firing Martins, but sources close to the matter say the Prime Minister and the President were at odds. Racked by conflict and unrest, Burkina Faso is a tough environment for journalists, with issues like rape and sexual violence often taboo. But Mariam Ouedraogo is pushing back to provide a platform through her reporting for those affected by unrest. While in Washington to receive an award, she spoke with VOA's Salem Solomon about her career.
Based in the bustling capital of Burkina Faso, Mariam Ouedraogo is focused on her reporting for the French daily Citoyen. The Burkinabe journalist has built a career out of shedding light on oft-overlooked social issues that affect her community. In her coverage of education, health, and insecurity, she looks to how women, children, and people with disabilities are affected. Her drive, a desire to make a difference through journalism.
It's because I wanted to change things. I had this desire not to change the social order, but I was looking for a job that would allow me to have more impact, especially on social facts and the subjects surrounding us.
It's an approach that has earned the reporter national and international recognition, including a Knight Award presented in Washington in the fall. Each award, says Ouedraogo, is an opportunity to amplify the voices of those she reports on, including survivors of conflict and rape. Ouedraogo also broke new ground when honored with the Bayou Calvados Normandy Award for War Correspondence, the first African woman to win that award. Militant attacks in Ouedraogo's home country are increasing. The Africa Center for Strategic Studies, a research center focused on security, estimates that around 8,600 people will die due to extremist attacks by the end of this year, more than double the total last year. Instability in Burkina Faso drives a lot of Ouedraogo's reporting. She says the stories collected from survivors of rape, which extremists often use as a weapon, weigh heavy.
It's unimaginable what suffering they endured. The simple fact that she is sexually assaulted, and often by several people, and in front of everyone, sometimes under the gaze of children. It's traumatic, and it's another death. I call it another death.
Ouedraogo opened up about her struggles with what is commonly known as vicarious trauma, a form of post-traumatic stress.
It's as if I was being raped in their place, and I found myself in it without understanding anything. But each time I felt like I was receiving the blows. So that's what led me into this stress, into vicarious traumas that I carry with me until today.
Reporting can be tough in a country known for its restrictive media environment. Journalists face limitations on movement and societal taboos, especially topics like rape and sexuality.
We don't talk about it. This is why the victims remain silent. They don't like to tell stories because there is the view of society, not only are you a victim, but you will also be repudiated and stigmatized.
Describing her process of collecting these accounts as testimony, Ouedraogo encourages more women to become journalists, saying women bring unique perspectives to marginalized communities and emphasizing the potential of journalism to affect positive change. Salem Solomon, VOA News.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.